Chrissy. Thank you for such a lovely introduction. Yes, my name is Belinda Di Bartolo. A little bit of background about me. I have about 20 years experience in academic research and recently joined LCT in January this year to drive forward this exciting, groundbreaking research in NTCELL. So that's what I'm going to take you through today. So our disclaimer. So Living Cell Technologies is an Australasian biotechnology company whose mission is to discover, develop and commercialise novel treatments for debilitating conditions. And we do this by leveraging the potential of living cells and using these living cells to address the unmet need in these serious conditions. And so as a company, we've previously worked in the diabetes field and developed a product called DiabeCell. And this was acquired and is now being further developed by Otsuka Pharmaceutical Factory in the US. And so we are now focused in the area of Parkinson's disease. And I'm going to tell you today about NTCELL. So this is our corporate snapshot. We have a market cap of 10 million. We have about as of the 31st of March, we had 3.5 million in cash. We recently raised 1.2 million and in a share purchase placement, and so that brings our cash total to 4.9 million. And LCT benefits from a really experienced leadership on the board. So we have two well-respected in their fields research academics in our Executive Chairman and Interim CEO, Professor Bernie Tuck, and in our non-executive medical director, Professor Carolyn Su, who is a well-renowned expert in Parkinson's disease and movement disorders. And they're joined by Mr. Robert Wilcox, who is a very experienced businessman, particularly with publicly listed companies, and also Dr. Andrew Kelly, who has extensive experience in research and development and commercialisation. Our company secretary is Mertens, led by Mark Lucchiato, and our management team consists of myself as COO and Mr. Daya Uka, who is our Chief Financial Officer, who is based in New Zealand. So Parkinson's disease is the second most common neurodegenerative disorder, and it comes from a degeneration of the brain cells that produce dopamine. And so dopamine is an important chemical in the brain because it controls our smooth muscle movement. So we've all been exposed to Parkinson's disease signs and symptoms, as Chrissy said, being able to, catch a ball after the tremors, have started, stiffness in movement, inability to control speech, and it can even lead to a decline in brain function. And what's really fascinating is that the current treatments that are available for Parkinson's disease only treat the signs and the symptoms that we see. So the tremors can stop, the replacement with all the drugs are really dopamine replacements. So this can control your movement and improve it, but ultimately there is no treatment available that actually prevents the progression of Parkinson's disease. And so when a patient presents to the clinic for the first time to be diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, 50% of the brain cells that produce dopamine have already degenerated. And so we need to protect the remaining 50%, because if we don't protect those cells, the disease will still continue to progress. And as the disease progresses, the treatments that we are giving these patients, like levodopa, the dopamine replacement therapies, will cease to be effective. Because as the disease progresses, the treatments are less effective. And so this opens up a gap in the market in which LCT can progress forward its NTCELL program. And it's a growing global market. It's currently worth $5.7 billion US dollars, and it's only expected to rise with a prediction that it will be worth $11.5 billion by 2029. And why is it rising? Well, it's rising because we have an ever-increasing ageing population. As we live longer, we are more exposed to age-related diseases. There are currently 10 million people with Parkinson's disease globally, 100,000 in Australia alone, and it costs the Australian economy $775 million per year. So what is NTCELL? NTCELL is choroid plexus cells that are surgically removed from the brain. Now, choroid plexus cells exist to secrete essential growth factors and nutrients in the brain. They will be implanted, so they will be surgically removed from a special herd of designated pathogen-free pigs that live on the sub-Antarctic Auckland Islands. Now, these special pigs, very clean pigs, will provide the choroid plexus tissue. The tissue will be surgically removed, shipped to Australia, in which it will become encapsulated. And this is important because the encapsulation process enables a protection of these living cells. It's a microcapsule that allows free movement of the growth factors and nutrients from the cells out into the surrounding environment when it's implanted into the brain. Importantly, however, it also protects these cells from being attacked by the patient's immune system. So we're looking to get regulatory approval from the TGA in order to implant 50-plus Parkinson's disease patients with NTCELL. And this is on the basis of previous clinical trials that were done in New Zealand. So a phase 1 clinical trial was performed in 2012, in which we demonstrated safety and toxicity data. And then phase 2 also extended on the phase 2, on the safety and toxicity data, but also demonstrated most effective dosage. So in this phase 2 trial, LCT implanted 40 capsules, 80 capsules, and 120 capsules on either side of the brain. It was the 80 capsule dosage that demonstrated the most effective clinical endpoint with the greatest change in UPDRS score from baseline. So the UPDRS score is the most common measure for Parkinson's disease patients, and it really measures change in the symptoms and the signs. So despite this clinically relevant effect that was observed, the study failed to reach statistical significance because we had quite small numbers in each group. So despite this, it was this indication to LCT to establish a third phase 2 clinical trial to occur here in Australia so that we could capitalise on an increased patient population. So what's LCT doing at the moment for this project? We've successfully secured use of the pigs with an agreement with NZeno in New Zealand. And NZeno will provide the choroid plexus tissue out of their facility that they're establishing in Invercargill. So NZeno is managed as a designated pathogen-free facility. And this is done by screening by an American molecular diagnostics company called Zoologics. They are currently upgrading the facility to house our clinical herd of pigs and also establish our surgical suites. And it's here that the choroid plexus tissue will be removed before it is then shipped to Australia. And in Australia, we are perfecting the manufacturing process. So NTCELL will be prepared in a non-GMP facility. And so we heard GMP before, so good manufacturing process. We're doing it outside of a good manufacturing process first to establish to the TGA that we can reproduce the NTCELL, just like we did in New Zealand for the previous clinical trials. And then once we've done that, which we're currently doing at the moment, we'll be ready to move into a GMP facility and manufacture the NTCELL to be given to patients. In addition to this, we have recently signed an agreement with a Sydney-based startup company called OptiCell AI. And here we're going to be using digitally enhanced artificial intelligence methods in order to consistently optimise the capsule selection and the maintenance of the NTCELL. So we're looking for regulatory approval. We've had preliminary discussions with the TGA for the approval for NTCELL to be implanted into Parkinson's disease patients. And we've done this because we are likely to be the first Australian company that will do a NZeno cell transplantation with living cells. And approval for this has already occurred in New Zealand with MedSafe, and this was done in 2012 and 2015. And so between MedSafe and TGA, we've been able to start preliminary discussions for that approval. And then we will begin our clinical trial. So the aim here is to modulate disease progression. As I said earlier, our phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials demonstrated safety and identified the most effective dose. The planned site for this clinical trial is in Sydney, where we will have access to a state-of-the-art PET scanner, which is currently being installed. Now, access to this PET scanner is a huge advantage because it will give us a level of sophistication in measuring these, the dopamine levels in these patients that just was not available to us in the past. And it gives us a level of quantitation. UPDRS scores are very commonly used to measure effective treatments in Parkinson's disease patients, but they are subjective. And so being able to provide a level of sophistication, as I said, in a proper quantitative manner will be very important. We are lucky enough to have Professor Carolyn Sue on our board, who is an international authority in Parkinson's disease and conveniently located in Sydney. And we will aim to recruit 50+ patients in their early to mid stages of Parkinson's disease. Now, this is different to what was done previously in New Zealand, in which the patients that were enrolled in the study were enrolled in their mid to late phase stage of Parkinson's disease. And so we're doing this in order to be able to capitalise on the number of brain cells that are still, working, if you like. Thank you. So this is our current timeline. We have established a pig source. We are getting choroplexus tissue supplied, and that will continue throughout the length of the trial. NTCELL manufacturing will also continue throughout the length of the trial. As I said, we're looking at regulatory approval, which will occur by the end of 2023 so that we can implant our first patient by Q1 2024, and the monitoring will continue. We have, as a company, other research and development opportunity initiatives. As I mentioned earlier, the NTCELL, we have a royalty on the encapsulation technology, and we've been exploring other value-added opportunities, which we will outline in due course. So the investor milestones are the confirmation of manufacture in a non-GMP facility, for manufacturing to occur in a GMP facility by Q4 2022. We will aim for regulatory approval in for the third clinical trial so that we can implant the first patient in Q1 2024. So overall, what LCT are doing is groundbreaking research in what is a growing global market of Parkinson's disease. And we're doing this with a world-leading, experienced team of researchers, professionals, and collaborators. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you can come and talk to me later at the booth. Thanks so much.